Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is a press conference Mbali has convened to give you an update on the future of her campaign. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mbali Ntuli to address you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for coming. Last month, I publicly announced that I would be re-engaging my campaign as the lockdown began to ease. When I did so, I was under no illusion that this is the most important internal campaign for the Democratic Alliance. I believe that we are at a crossroads, and that if we continue with the status quo of simply throwing facts at voters and hoping that somehow we can change their minds or change their votes by telling them how they should vote and hoping that they do so, that it won't happen. Instead, I believe that we should be appealing to voters' hearts and really giving them hope so that they can vote for us. Wonke umuntu uyazi ukuthi iqembu lethu eliphethe alisebenzi ngendlela efanele ngabe lisebenza ngayo. Our governing party has failed dismally, and many people know that. Many people also know that where we govern, we do much better. We definitely have to do more, though. But none of these facts have significantly moved the electorate into voting more for the Democratic Alliance. And I believe it's because we continue to speak to voters as though voters are solely moved on facts. In fact, I think that voters are moved on facts, on the feeling that a party engenders in them, the trust that they have in that party, and very importantly, the fact that they have a leader in that party that they can relate to. Now, our party has a choice. We can continue with the same playbook and change some tactics here and there, or, under my leadership, we can really reimagine how we try to engage with our voters and really work hard to engage and gain their trust. Last month, the Democratic Alliance had its Federal Council, where it resolved that we would be continuing with a virtual Congress. I think that my reasons to object to this Congress have been publicly well known. In any event, I'm very pleased that the Federal Council agreed with many of my calls that to have simply an elective conference that would have been one day to simply elect a leader would have been a farce of an election. And I'm very pleased that my colleagues on Federal Council agreed with me by actually passing that we have a fully deliberative conference that will have constitutional amendments and resolutions that will hopefully help to really take the concerns that were raised over the party's regressions in last year's election. I do still have some serious reservations about this conference, particularly around the security and the efficacy of the proposed online system voting. And I have written to Dr. Ivan Meyer of the Federal Council, who is also chairperson and who is running the process. And I've detailed my concerns, requesting assurances from him that the outstanding technical issues will be dealt with, and that outcomes will be audited fully by an independent third party. And I say this because I met with many IT representatives who were able to confirm to me, and which the party agreed via the party's campaign technology manager or director, Adrian Firth, that there are some serious flaws with the voting system's architecture. The OPA system will not allow any verification of who is actually voting. It will only allow us to know that a vote took place. And this is obviously not auditable and is problematic if we intend to run a free and fair process digitally. I also stress in an environment, as put in our own review panel, of coercion and fear, that it will be very easy to rig the results. Abantu bazokwazi ukuthi berobhe uma befuna. Uma usatshiswa nje ngokuthi fanele uvotele bani, uzokwazi ukuthi utshele ukuthi uvote kanjani. And this will be as simple as I've been told by many people and the IT experts, as simply forwarding the email link to anybody and allowing them to vote for you. Crucially also, this OPA system doesn't allow myself or anybody on my team to be able to ensure the fidelity and the security and the impartiality of the system. And this means that whenever a vote is cast, we will not be able to know that it's been actually allocated to the candidate that it's been cast for. It's not good enough to simply say that I mistrust or that any candidate mistrusts that the party will do this behind the scenes. And this is why, even as a Democratic Alliance, we don't allow the IEC to just simply run elections. We make sure that we have party agents and people who can ensure that it is an independent process, to ensure that they oversee it from start to finish. This currently cannot happen in our system because all these votes will be cast and sent to our federal head office. So as I wait for the chairperson to address those concerns, I think that it is important that our party begins the process of verifying and vetting the two candidates or the candidates that will be on offer at the upcoming Congress. And now it has been a long-standing democratic tradition, particularly in liberal parties and in liberal democracies, that you have primary debates, and that these debates are deeply entrenched in the liberal and democratic institution where you want your government to have parties that seem to be politically mature enough to be able to govern. I believe that these debates will provide an opportunity for the DA to show that we are a fully transparent party that is capable of being open and allowing our federal delegates and the public at large to understand where each of these candidates stand on various issues that affect the country. I think it's also important that people know what the contrast is between John Steenhuisen and I as the candidates for the top job in this party. And I think it's also fair to say that anybody who seeks to be the leader of the opposition has a credible position as being somebody that can be viewed as a prospective president of our country. And it is therefore certainly within the public interest to conduct a series of public debates, at least 4 that are televised. I think that members of the DA and our public in particular are tired of politicians who operate behind closed doors and under the cover of darkness, and who don't avail themselves for reasonable scrutiny and to be held accountable for many of the views that they hold. And this must change. And that is why I am challenging Mr. John Steenhuisen to a series of 4 live, televised, democratic debates in keeping with the great liberal tradition. I cannot think of a valid reason why John or the party would oppose an open and transparent debate of national interest on a public platform. I think it's important because it seems like there are many notable differences between myself and John Steenhuisen. Mengabe nje ubuka ama-manifesto ethu, kuyacaca ukuthi khona umehluko phakathi kwendlela sobabili sicabanga ngayo ukuthi fanele siqhubeke noma fanele siphathe isizwe. And ngicabanga ukuthi kubalekile ngempela ukuthi abantu bebe nethuba ukuthi besibuze imibuzo nokuthi futhi besibone ukuthi simephi mengabe kuhambisana nenkinga ebhekene nesimo somnotho nokuthi abantu abanamhlaba nokuthi abantu abasebenzi. These are the critical choices that the Democratic Alliance must make when it comes to our 2 leaders. Do they vote for John, a candidate that is part of the existing establishment and wishes and seems to really maintain the status quo? Or do they vote for a candidate that wishes to reimagine what South Africa could look like? Give our young people who are sitting at home, even when they are qualified, hope that there is going to be a better tomorrow for them. A candidate that has a bold vision for where we can take South Africa into the future. Do they vote for John, an influential and key member of both the federal executive and the National Management Committee, who sat on these bodies and oversaw the DA losing 3 of our metro governments? Or do they vote for a candidate who has worked hard to lead electoral growth and grew the party in last year's national election? Do they vote for John, a candidate who has not had a constituency in years? Or do they vote for one that created branches where there were none in the furthest parts and the most rural parts of KZN that helped us to win new electoral votes, that helped us to be kingmakers? I believe that I'm bringing bold and transformative, visionary leadership at a time when the party and the country desperately needs it. I want to show that my party can really try and make South Africa the kind of country that we all desperately want. And I'm asking for your help as delegates of the DA. In the next few months, we're going to be fighting the most important and probably the hardest local government elections that we have ever fought. And in order to ensure that we can return as many councillors as possible and make sure that we win as many seats as possible, we are going to have to capture the imagination of the youth. We are going to have to mobilize people that stayed at home and people that didn't vote for us last time to make sure that they come and vote for us this time. I want us to work together towards this goal, and I want us to do the very hard work of nation building. And the first step is I believe that we can do this by accepting that coalitions are a reality of South Africa's present and future in the quest to realign politics. Now, the DA has, quite frankly, struggled to embrace coalition politics. And this has been evidenced by our own disintegration of our 3 metros that we won just 4 years ago. We need to be an equal partner. We need to honor the agreements that we make. And we need to do so without hubris and arrogance. And our word really needs to mean something. I'm personally saying that I will approach these negotiations with an open mind and goodwill. I will be the kind of leader that I think has been sorely lacking an absence from the negotiations done by the DA. And I think that those leaders have really forged mistrust and hostility, which has been to the detriment of our residents. And so I think it's important, particularly for our delegates and our councillors whose lives are on the line in this particular election, to know that I am probably the best suited leader in this current election to reach across the divide, particularly because I have good relations with all opposition leaders, but even those that have left our party, including those that have gone on to start new parties. And I think that I will be able to reach across the divide better than any other candidates can. We have a governing party that has failed us in every single possible way. A party that has used this COVID-19 public health crisis to loot and pillage from our state to the point where we have basically destroyed our immediate economic future. A governing party who has willingly and knowingly overlooked even something as important as the urgent climate and ecological crisis that we face, and quite frankly, that threatens us all. All our future generations will possibly come with immense catastrophe if we don't correct this possible failure of our government. Sonke siyazi ukuthi uhulumeni wethu uyahluleka endaweni eningi, kodwa mhlasimpe le efanele isihlukumeze kakhulu ile ekhuluma ngokuthi angeke sibe nomhlaba esikwazi ukuthi siwusebenze. Ngisho singawuthola lowo mhlaba angeke sikwazi ukwenza lutho ngawo. And this is one of many issues, and there are many, that I believe are long overdue for the DA to be bold on and to step up on. As the official opposition, I think that the DA has a fundamental duty to be speaking about the ecological crisis that we face and the ecocide that we are living in. And maybe I say this as somebody who lives in KZN, where there's a constant lack of water, erosion of our habitat, wide-scale pollution, and we see people living in absolute filth. Ngiyazi nani ukuthi ngiyazi ukuthi lesomiso la eKZN abantu abanayo amanzi. Mina ngisebenza emkhanya kude ngantshana manje ukuthi la khona idam yasejozini ngisho abantu abahlala khona abakwazi ukuthi bethola amanzi. Akwazi ukuthi kube khona isimo esinjalo sibe sinawo amanzi, sibe sinawo amadam. And these are the kinds of issues, along with the heart of our economics, that I want to challenge Mr. John Steenhuisen on. I want us to bring the sharp focus of differences between the two of us, and I want the voting delegates of Federal Congress to really have a right to know who they are voting for. I trust that Mrs. Steenhuisen will accept my challenge to debate our visions for the Democratic Alliance as a legitimate platform to showcase our respective offers to the delegates of both the party and South Africa at large. I want to remind Mrs. Steenhuisen that the idea of having external debates was championed by him when he was the campaign manager and right-hand man of Mmusi Maimane in 2015. Today, I maintain that the reasons that he put forward about why Wilmot and Mmusi had to have that external debate are still as relevant and even more relevant. So I look forward to hearing from Mrs. Steenhuisen, and I will await his answer a week from today. And finally, I wish to speak to you, the DA Federal Congress delegates, and the South African people. You are the reason I am here today, because I know too well how many of us are so tired of politicians who speak one thing and do another. I'm tired about how our country seems to have nothing absolutely working. I'm tired about the state of our world, and I'm tired when we look for leadership, all that we see are people that are interested in their own selves and their own self-interest and their own entitlement. And precisely when we should be pulling together during a global pandemic like COVID-19, all that we have seen from our leaders is political opportunism that has protected their interests and that has consolidated their long tentacles of favor and access. And this only works for them. So I'm saying that we don't need any more political strongmen in South Africa anymore. We've had far too many of those already. This pandemic has shown us, once again, how very clearly unequal you are. Poverty is a terrible thing, and it's still far too prevalent in South Africa. Abantu bayahlupheka. We are still the most unequal country in the world, and it is of our own making. It is not a crime to be poor, but we behave like it is a sentence in this country to a life of destitution and misery. Asikwazi ukuthi sidedele abantu abakhula behluphekile futhi kube yithina esingabanikeza amathuba ukuthi bekwazi ukuthi beyikhiphe kuleso simo. Mina njengomholi ngempela ngifuna ukuthi sikwazi ukuthi sisebenze ukuthi abantu siziqiniseke ukuthi bawathola lawo mathuba ukuthi beyikhiphe lezi zimo abayithola kuzona. Akho umuntu ofuna ukuthi ehlupheke, akho umuntu ongayimisela ukuthi ngasebenza kakhulu. But fanele sibanikeze amathuba. We've been told so many times by our current leaders across political parties, particularly the ones that are in generations older than myself, that this is the way things have to be, that this is the way the economy is, that we must choose if we want to have an economy that looks over certain people over another. And I want to call bullshit. We need an entirely new economy, an economy that works for everyone and not just the few at the top or the people that have capital. We need an economy that houses the homeless, that feeds the hungry, and that educates our young people. And an economy which is sustainable and that really cares for our natural environment. So I'm proposing, as the leader of the DA, that I want to lead the DA in a vision and in a future that really rethinks the ethics of our economy. We don't have to have all our businesses and all our big capital industries really thinking only about profit. I think that we can have a situation where we have a stakeholder economy, where we have people really having equal opportunities to thrive. An economy that is not built solely for profit, but one where the state and business can work together to forge a society that cares for everyone. And I think we need it now. And I want to say that as a young person, it is particularly something that is urgent for me. Nation building is obviously no easy task. And when I look at this room and the press that are gathered here, who bravely keep our democracy alive, I want to thank them for their hard work. I know the DA hasn't always been good in that respect. I want to thank you for keeping our democracy alive. And I'm here to promise you today that my campaign will renew the compact of nation building across our entire society and will instill it within the DA. To those Federal Congress delegates who are still unsure about who they'll be voting for, and especially to those that have already endorsed John, simply maybe because they think there's no option or they thought that there was no other choice, I'm here to tell you today that there is a new way that we can genuinely save the DA, and more than this, I think that we have to. If we can't do that, then we cannot take the liberal project of the Democratic Alliance and all of our dreams of restoring South Africa and giving her prosperity forward. Our country needs us to do this. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get down to work. I want to build a collaborative, powerful, and dynamic party which embraces all of our diversity. I want to reach out to people that we've never spoken to. I want to reach out to experts that have different ideas to us. I want to reach out to people that have never considered the DA a particular option and welcome them in and tell them that their voices will be heard and get their advice on how we can do things. If you still believe in this nation, I hope that you will join me. Everybody is needed. Everybody is welcome. We are all South Africans, and I think we've seen that when we all come together, we are able to do a lot. So let us now boldly forge a new way forward that will honor the inherent human dignity of our citizens, that will make sure that we can secure jobs, and that will make sure that there's justice and peace and prosperity in our country. Wherever you are, wherever you are, I invite each and every DA member and each and every South African to please join me in my campaign. I thank you.